With you guys, man, there's just something about it. There is something about it. We have one awesome announcement, and it's happening tomorrow night. So you don't even have to remember it for a long time. We've been announcing it for a few weeks, but tomorrow night at 6 p.m. That's the start time. But we get the opportunity as multiple churches to be kingdom minded. So multiple churches tomorrow night coming together. And we're just going to pray for a move of God across Lee County and a few other counties as multiple churches and pastors come together and just spend time praying. So, hey, if you're like, man, I don't like praying around other people. Well, come, because you get to be in the presence of God at least. And that's more than enough for me. But that's happening tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Would love to see you guys and just pray for our community, pray for each church and stuff. And it's going to be an awesome time. You're not going to want to miss it. At this time, if the rest of staff could join me on stage. If you don't know, today is a very special day. 20 years ago, on this exact day, this isn't like the closest Sunday to the day, I mean the exact day, 20 years ago, our pastors came in and they started at the bottom. No, I'm kidding. They started though as college pastors. And then continued to answer the call. Every time God called, they never sent him to voicemail. And for 20 years, they've been on staff serving this community and this house as college pastors, children's pastors, youth pastors, men's, women's director, nursery. I mean, anything and everything, and then senior pastors for the majority of that time. So this morning, we're going to take a few moments and we're going to honor them. So I'm going to start off with the staff would like to say a few things. So whichever one wants to go first. You want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm not going to yap up here like some people say I yap a lot. So I'm going to make this short and sweet. But really, as I was trying to think of what to say when Pastor Evers was like, hey, y'all want to say something? I was like, what do you say with someone who has served a faithfulness of 20 years? That's pretty much my whole life, pretty much, besides a year. So I'm like, what do you say? Being this young and seeing people day in and day out serve somewhere for 20 years, you just don't see that nowadays. You don't see the faithfulness to push through the good times, the bad times, the hard times, and then the fun times. It's hard to see that now because we strive to do what we feel is bigger, better. It's oh, I need to go somewhere else or I need to do something else, when life gets hard. But, as I was thinking about just my gratefulness and thankfulness and just everything, I just kept going back to how selfless y'all are and what an example to not only the entire congregation, but even personally, seeing y'all day in and day out, not, seeing the hardships and the behind the scenes and the love and the selflessness to people, just really you walk out what we're called to walk out, which is Jesus's life, and to be selfless and humble and love and offer forgiveness. And that's really all I have to say, because I have personally witnessed y'all walk out y'all's walk for the Lord personally and through serving him to lead others to Christ. So I just want to say thank y'all for doing that and being beautiful examples of what amazing senior pastors are like and, the crazy times and stuff. So I just want to say thank you.
20 years is a long time. It's how long I've been alive. But, for 20 years, that's a good-looking couple. You can't lie. We got a good-looking senior pastor team. But on the other side of that, how many of you know that the first minute you spend with somebody, you can tell a lot about them? You spend 1 minute with them, and you're going to want to spend a whole lot more minutes with them. They are impactful in your life as soon as you meet them, as soon as you talk to them. I stuck around. As soon as you talk to them, it doesn't even have to be a minute. You know that they are people that you want to know. They're people you want to have, and they're people that are in your corner from the moment that you talk to them. And for 20 years, you have been impacting people from all ages, from infants in the nursery when you have to do that, when you're called to that, to seniors talking about their lives every day. Yep. For 20 years, you have been from that moment, and you have met countless people. And that first minute has impacted, I think everybody in this room knows how much that first minute has led to every minute after that.
Yeah, I wrote mine down. I got more to say than that because I grew up in a pastor's home. I married a pastor's son. So I know the hard work. I know the dedication. I know the sacrifices that they make. Today we get the opportunity to honor a couple that has become so special to so many of us. Our pastors are sacrificial. They give up their time to shepherd us so well. There's a lot of hospital and home visits, phone calls, and just being there when you need them. There are so many times when they are tired, but the need is more important to them. Movie nights derailed, dinners interrupted, and plans changed, but their heart is for you. Our pastors are hardworking, whether it's preparing for Sunday, helping someone cleaning the church, or even doing the mundane, dirty tasks like replacing toilets. There is always something to do. Our pastors are transparent. What you see is what you get. They aren't fake, nor do they put on airs. They are genuine and heartfelt. It's seen in their words, their time given, and their prayers. They are wise. You hear wisdom is free if you ask for it, but wisdom is the application of the knowledge. They study continuously to fill their toolbox so God can show them how to use it best. I'm so thankful that they are in tune to Holy Spirit and His direction for the church and you. I wouldn't be here if they weren't. I wouldn't. I'd be somewhere else. Just saying. I left a Wednesday night at one church. She calls me on Friday and asking if my kids can come lead worship. I remember that, and I remember like, okay, Father, yeah, you're working. You know where I need to be. It took us a year to start coming on Sunday mornings, but the Lord knew where He needed us to be. If they weren't listening to Holy Spirit and their direction, I wouldn't be here, and I'm thankful that I'm here. I really am. They gave up chasing money and status for the hard role of pastor and the many hats they wear. 20 years at one church is amazing. They have committed themselves to you, Southview, and I'm beyond thankful for that. But do you know what my favorite thing is about them? They are mine.
I wasn't really going to brown nose as much as your son-in-law. No, halfway through, I was like, dude, you're already married. You don't have to do that. No, back in November at Youth Leaders Conference, just in the altar, they're like, hey, who's your youth pastor? And they were doing this, thing like you make a difference. And I was sitting there and I was like, man, mine was my mom for like 6.5 years. And in that moment, until then, I had always been like, man, Lord, I wish you'd given me someone different. She was a phenomenal youth pastor, but I'm like, I live with her. So, I mean, it was, I already knew a lot. I mean, she was like, I tell my kids, I'm like, yesterday, in messages, no. But in that moment, I realized how blessed I was because I had the same youth pastor for 6.5 years. I didn't have somebody walk out. And not just the same youth pastor, I actually also was blessed with the same church family. This is all I know. I know I left a church that I'd been at my whole life at 2.5 years old. And I've blocked it out. I don't remember much. But this is all I know. You guys are my family. And I get to say that because of your faithfulness. I get the opportunity to have grown up here, many hours here. Now I choose to be up here, but as a kid, I didn't. I really didn't. There were some seasons I felt like I was here more than at home. But I get those opportunities because of your faithfulness. Pop, Nanny, and Obs and I are really the only ones that have had a front row seat the entire time. And I through this getting today ready, I've realized how blessed I am to have been at the same church. And I get to say that she's been able to have a stable church life. We've been blessed to not resent the church as pastors' kids. And all of that is because of your faithfulness. And I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm sure there are people that have been able to have moments, maybe not spending as many hours, but moments where their walk with the Lord is because of faithfulness in your calling. You know, the corporate world always looks at certain job levels, and if you get to be the CEO, everything is a stepping stone. That's not how the role of a pastor should be. There are some pastors where they may treat children's ministry or youth ministry as a stepping stone to try and be an executive or a senior pastor. You guys never used anything as a stepping stone. But I look at you being at the top, not as senior pastors, but you're at the top because you chose to be obedient. And thank you for not only being obedient and accepting the call of being a senior pastor, because I know that was I'm sure that was a prayer or two, making those decisions. But thank you for being my pastors. There's times where it's been hard having to separate the hat between dad and mom and Pastor Clint and Miss Mary. I'm not weird. I don't call them that at home. But I have been blessed, though, with pastors that understand the difference. And this is, I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit, but there's been times where it's been hard. And there's been times where there's things that have been said. But I've not only grown up in a house like this, but I've been blessed to serve a church that is leaders are willing to ask for forgiveness when they've been in the wrong. And also willing to accept an apology when I've been in the wrong. And they've given me grace. And I've learned that not every church is like that. Not all senior pastors give the same grace that they expect from their staff. And my love for ministry is because of the call of God, but my willingness to continue to walk that out is because you guys have created such a great environment. And it's really hard sometimes praying about when someone gives me a call, the few times that has happened, because I don't want to leave here. It's not because I'm scared. It's not because I'm not willing. It's because I know I have it really good right now. And I not only have incredible pastors that will stand behind me with a vision or stand behind me with an idea, but I've also been blessed to be able to do it with my parents, my dad and mom. So thank you guys for your faithfulness, because I know I definitely wouldn't be here through my difficult trials if it wasn't for you guys. So if you guys wouldn't mind, we're going to call you guys up. We'd like to present you a few gifts. You can do it. It's okay. But if you guys wouldn't mind, though, as they're walking up, just give them just a round of applause, though, just for their faithfulness. I feel like I'm on The Price is Right. First up, you get a bouquet of flowers, and then you get a card. The card is from the church as a whole, and then this, we would love, the elders and I, through prayer, we wish it could be more. This is not a representation of our love for you guys. We wish we could do way more. But as a thank you, that card, the check is for a vacation of your choosing and 2 weeks off, Wednesdays and Sundays for you guys. Just as a thank you, but
doing this again.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, 21 years. Okay, yeah, but just thank you guys, and truly, when the elders and I met, and just let you guys know, I mean, you guys have assembled a team of people with elders and staff that love you guys and are proud to call you guys our pastors. We don't feel stuck. Well, at least the elders and the staff doesn't. Maybe the congregation does, but we don't feel stuck at all. So we love you guys. Thank you. And with that, Pastor Kieth, whenever you're ready, it's yours.
I just want to thank everybody. They're heavy. They told me that. I don't know which I'm more excited about, the vacation or the fact that it's did I understand it correctly? 2 Sundays? 2 Sundays and 2 Wednesdays. I'm going to. I don't know how. I was a bit nervous. We've never done 2 weeks in a row. And the other night, he said to me, he said, "Hey, I've got a surprise for you and you're going to like it." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Well, even if you don't, you will." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Hey, I just want you to know," because I've been a little under the weather this week, if you can tell. And he said, "I just want you to know I'm not going to preach Sunday." And it sounds silly, but I get worked up as a spouse for 20 years. I get nervous all week long because I don't know what he's going to say up here. And so to have all of the sudden being sick, and then we had gone, to pick up my folks, it was such a relief. And so now we get another one of these. Wow, that's so great. But because Pastor Ever spoke last week. No, I want to thank you guys so much. When they were up here talking, I mean, some of you don't know this, but we've raised our dogs up here. I don't know how many times our dogs have wet on the floor in the activity center, but don't worry, it's just concrete with crappy carpet. And so we just, would wash it down and, whatever. They've spent they've missed many meals to be up here and say, "Hey, Dad, we're hungry." And he's like, "Oh, just a few more minutes." And then at 4 p.m., they're like, "Dad, can we have breakfast?" True stories, not joking, not the best parenting moments. We're like, just go in the nursery, get some goldfish. But, sometimes when things have to be done, things have to be done. And you figure out a way to make it happen. And I don't know how we've done it. In many ways, it seems like it's gone quickly. And in many ways, it seems like it's lasted, like, when is retirement? Oh, wait, that's right, we don't have it. No, but the Bible does not talk about retirement. So I'm just going to put that one out there. But when you're born to do something, it's funny in ministry because it's the hardest, most rewarding thing that you'll ever do. But I'm going to tell you, each and every one of us have a call from the Lord. Yours might be in a job with IT or banking, or maybe you're a banker, a school teacher. Mine just happened to look a little bit differently than yours. And lots of days I'll fire myself, and within a few hours I rehire myself because I realize that really is the thing that I want to be doing. It's the thing that I know that I was called to do. So even though it's difficult and it's hard, and there's many times that I think, what were we thinking? I really don't know if we were, but I think we were just the last man standing, kind of like Survivor. But they thought, well, if there's nobody else, we'll just grab them. But the truth is, we've done it, and here we are. I don't know how long it'll last, but let's just keep on riding the ride. They might give us another one of these in 20. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. I would love you guys, and true stories, not the best parenting moments of kids, but they did get to ride their skateboard from the back of the activity center all the way up here as fast as they wanted to. So that was like an opportunity, and VeggieTales on a big screen, that makes up for all the lost meals. But we love you guys. We love... Today we love doing this. This afternoon we might not. Just like you and your job, there's times that you love it and there's times you don't. But as I was enjoying worship down there, I just said to the Lord, I said, "Wow, Lord, 20 years, whether we stayed out of stubbornness or we stayed where you called us, either way you sustained us through it all." And let that be something that just, not just for us for 20 years, but let that be for maybe your moment right now in life. Let that be for maybe the next season. Just remember that through it all, whether we've been stubborn, but he sustained us. Yes. And he will keep on because he has the master plan, and it's a perfect plan. And it's a great plan. So we love you guys. And one more thing. This whole 1 minute thing, he saw Aubrey Stevens. It wasn't us. I'm just telling you right now, don't buy that line at all. And you don't need to be an engineer. You need to be a car salesman if you're shooting those kind of lines.
Yeah, for real, man. Like, golly, laying it on thick. Kids Church, you guys are dismissed. I wanted, though, before we call Pastor Kieth up, I would like to share this. So if you guys aren't aware, they're also celebrating their little 20-year friend anniversary as well, though. And that's one of the reasons why I called. Did I not say it right? Friend, sure. Neither one of them have been married for only 20 years, but that was one of the reasons why you were my first call. And I said it in there for prayer, though. Even though you're technically a guest speaker, you're really not. Not only to our family, but even to this house. You guys are family. We claim y'all, and I know lots of other churches do too, because you guys are incredible people. But that is one of the reasons why you were one of my first calls, was because of the relationship, and I knew it would mean a lot for them to have somebody who is a friend. And just we love you guys, and thank you for taking the time to come down and spend the evening in Auburn. And but thank you guys, though, for also always being here, and you guys have played a role into that faithfulness. I know that there's been times where they've called you guys and vice versa, but we love you guys as well, and thank you for coming and speaking. So with that, if you guys wouldn't mind, though, giving a round of applause, though, for Pastor Kieth. I texted him this morning. I was like, hey, do you want a walk-up song? I think that would be awesome, man, but...
I did answer, but I don't hear a walk-up song, so. But that's good. I don't need a walk-up song. God's the one that's in control, right? And you don't have to be nervous with me, because I've got some stories, because I was actually on staff day one of them coming in. And so don't be nervous, because I'm not going to talk about all the stuff that I do know. We'll keep that for another sermon, all right? Today is about celebration, and so when Pastor Evers called me, and of course that's an immediate yes. I didn't even look at the calendar. I just said yes, and then I said, well, I better ask permission from the boss. And so as soon as I asked permission, she said yes, and so that's why we are here. We love being here, and then being here on a day like today to honor such awesome friends in a church that we love and people that we love. It's a no-brainer. It's absolutely a no-brainer to do this. I'm sorry, I'm getting situated. I have never preached with this particular case, so I don't like it. But today, we're going to talk about honoring the shepherd. Now, this is a message that neither one of them care about, because if you've known them, you know that they're pretty humble people. That's why we love them, is because they're so humble. And this message is about honoring the shepherds. And it's not a super spiritual hallelujah and stuff, even though there's a lot of scriptures. But I think we need to be reminded, because that's actually one of my pet peeves. My mom didn't have a lot of pet peeves, but honor was her pet peeve. And if she ever felt disrespected or not honored, then that's when I got in trouble. I remember saying some words that were not honoring while we were making up a bed to her. And all of a sudden, my woman, or my mama, I should say, that woman was a large woman. And all of a sudden, I saw her flying across the bed to slap me in the face and said, "You will not say like that in my house." I could say a lot of things, but I could not show disrespect and honor. But I look around today, and matter of fact, a pastor, a friend of mine, and we're having coffee up in Huntsville just this week, and we were talking about honor and respect and how society doesn't do that anymore, and how we've forgotten to do that. And so that's what we're talking about today, is honoring the shepherd. We're going to celebrate 20 years of faithful service. There was a minister that was preaching one day, and his normal is 30, 45 minute sermon, as most of you guys know. But this particular Sunday, he surprised his audience. He surprised his congregation when 10 minutes in, he ends the sermon. And he says, we got a new puppy that apparently likes paper. And he ate the rest of this sermon. And so you get to be blessed. Well, in that congregation, there was a visiting, some people from another church, and they came up to the pastor afterwards and said, hey, if that puppy ever has puppies, we're going to buy one for our pastor. I'm not going to spend a long time, but we are going to spend some time. How about that? 1 Thessalonians 5, 12, and 13. This is the where I want to start, and we're going to end with this particular one, but we're going to have lots of scripture. So, one thing that our church does, and actually our church did it, but our youth pastors really push it, and that's note-taking. So if you've got something, if you got a tithe envelope in the front, write notes, because I think it's always good to remind ourselves, what does the Bible say about honoring? And so take lots of notes. I wish I could remember what the youth pastor says, but he says it every Wednesday night. Note takers are history makers. That's right. So I want to make history. So 1 Thessalonians 5, 12, and 13. And we urge you, brethren, to recognize those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you, and to esteem them very high in love for their work's sake. Be at peace among yourselves. We're celebrating 20 years of service, and we've heard many, many stories of things. And I want to tell you, pastoring, actually being anywhere for 20 years is something now. Being on a job is 20 years is something now. You don't hear that. Being married for 20 years is something now, because you don't hear these things. But being in the same church for 20 years, in different roles, in different situations, people come and go. You help them. You pour out your life to them. And I'm going to tell you, you hear the things about being a pastor and how it is. Let me tell you, I have been in ministry for a long time. I'm kind of in a different role today. I guess I'm still in ministry because I still minister at different churches, and I have a different role that God has placed me in to encourage pastors and to help pastors. Because being a pastor, I mean, I remember just my family and I were in Orlando on vacation, and I get a phone call from somebody that their spouse died, and they wanted me to come back off of vacation to do a funeral. And I remember not even hesitating. I make plane arrangements. I fly up here. I do the funeral. I minister to the family, and that evening I fly back home to be with my family. Being a pastor is stopping what you're doing. It's being on call 24/7, being called at 1 o'clock in the morning because somebody had an accident and they're in the emergency room and they need your pastor. It also means that when you have your bad days, you have to keep them to yourself. When your spouse wakes up and they're in a bad mood, guess what? They have bad moods, or you're in a bad mood against your spouse. Those things have to stay silent because people judge you on your worst day. And as a pastor, those worst days come just like they do with you, because the devil's going to attack the head, because if he can corrupt the head, then the rest of the body will fall. And so you think you get attacked. Let me tell you, as a pastor, you are attacked like you wouldn't believe, constantly. And so you have to fortify yourself. And you know what that means? That means you as a church body, your responsibility is to cover them with prayers and intercession. That's what they get through. That's the way they get through. 20 years of faithful pastoring, Pastor Clint and Pastor Mary. 20 years of prayers, 20 years of tears, of sermons, of counseling, of weddings, of funerals, of hospital visits, spiritual warfare for 20 years going on. because it's a constant thing. Yes, there's blessings. There's days like this when they get blessed. There's other times where they get blessed when they see somebody that they have been ministering or praying for, when they've been standing beside you for that prodigal son, and they come back and they get to celebrate, and what the joy of that. And those wins, it's like if you've ever played golf and you're just about to give up and you hit that perfect golf shot, and so I can play another 18 holes. But it's like that. It's having that win. That one win helps say, God, I'm doing something finally. 20 years of standing in the gap for this church and for you personally and your family and all your prayer requests that you've put in. Matter of fact, there used to be a wall just a few years ago back there where you put prayer requests. They prayed over those and they celebrated when those things happened. I'm going to tell you, how many of you have ever had a rough week? We all have. Imagine having a rough week and then having to stand up here and be in the voice of God. The weight of that. The weight of that on a Saturday night going, God, this week has been nonstop. I need you to feed into me. I need you to make sure my mind is right so that I speak your word and not my word. 20 years of doing that. The question is, do we really understand what it means to be a pastor? The world has defined it. The world has defined it. And if you look up the pastor and what their jobs are, the world says that the pastor needs to be a motivational speaker, always making people feel good. As a matter of fact, I remember doing a Wednesday night series, and I remember somebody saying, Pastor, we come in here so that you can fill our sails so we can make it the rest of the day. And I'm like, well, what about learning the word? Because we're doing a Bible study, and right now these 2 chapters are setting up for the victory, but they're not victory. Right. But it's a pastor, according to the world, to be a spiritual coach, giving tips for a better life. 5 things to make your life better. 5 things that makes your boss give you the raise. Pastor should be a fundraiser, always raising money instead of souls. How many pastors do we watch on TV or listen to their podcast or listen to them, and they talk about the blessings because you give money and money and money and money. And so the world has defined them as nothing but fundraisers. I don't think I would be friends with them if I thought that was the way they were. Because they're not that way. What they want is you to obey God, not to give to God out of obligation, but to obey God because He is God. He wants your obedience. World says that they need to be a church manager. It's a business, so you got to manage everything. You got to focus on attendance and the numbers. You got to grow bigger and better, and don't worry about what you're teaching the people or having the spiritual growth, but the numbers is what matters. And then the last one is a pastor becomes a celebrity. Now, we put our pastors up on pedestals. I remember Tracy and I were on a date night. And we were in a restaurant, and I'm not going to mention any pastors' names, and she's already saying, oh, my goodness, and rolling her eyes because she knows what story I'm talking about. And we had just been at a marriage conference that day. And so we were doing a date night that night, and we're sitting in this restaurant, and all of a sudden I look up, and the speaker of the marriage conference and the pastor of that church are walking our way with their spouses. And I said, guess who is about to walk by our table? And she says, who? And I told her, and she's like, oh my God. And so we stood up because they stopped at our table. And this senior pastor of this church, he's a mega church pastor, he comes up and he puts his hand on Tracy, and Tracy just melts. Oh my God, I can't. And she's going crazy there. I mean, I stand up and I shake their hands. I mean, it's wonderful to see. This pastor that was speaking was one of the ones, and I've told Tracy, there's only 2 or 3 people in this whole world that I would love to just be able to meet, talk with, and have my picture taken with, and he was one of them, but it was not the place or the time, so I also respect their time. And so I just shook his hand, and I was glad to shake his hand. He'll never remember it, but I remember it. Why? Because he's celebrity. He's a celebrity to me, just like the other pastor was a celebrity to Tracy. But we put those up on the pedestals. But the problem with that is we tend to follow celebrity rather than the God that they represent. And when we put a pastor up on the pedestal and they fall, then what do we do with that? Because pastors are human too. And they're under attack just like you. The problem is when they fall, everybody sees it. I can remember, as a matter of fact, we were just talking about this the other day. Somebody gave me a recipe to a shrimp and pasta dish that I absolutely love in a restaurant, and they said, here's the recipe for it. And I'm looking at the recipe, and it had 1 cup or 2 cups of wine, white wine on it. And I'm like, what do? I can't go buy wine. You may not think nothing about it, but as soon as I buy it, there's going to be somebody from my church standing behind me in the line going, oh, he's drinking wine. See, we don't think about that as pastors. Now, somebody gave me some wine so I could make the dish because you cook out the alcohol in it, but it was a problem of buying it that you don't think about until you're a pastor and you're like, there's other people that I'm responsible for 24/7. And I'm not going to let a dish that I love keep them from being the Christian that they need to be. That's a weight that we don't think about as regular people. But the pastors do think about that. The pastors think about when they're having that really bad cashier at the store and you want to lash out to them. They want to lash out too, but they don't know who's watching. Pastoring, God's job description is a little different. Jeremiah 3:15 says it's a shepherd. Then I will give you a shepherd after my own heart, who will feed you with knowledge and understanding. A real pastor feeds his sheep. He protects his sheep, and he guides them with truth. That's what God's supposed to do. Not just make you feel good, but give you the truth. Truth does not always feel good. Now, as husbands, when the wife says, hey, does this make me look fat? You have to lie. Or you have to just say, baby, I love you no matter what you're wearing. And so, but a shepherd is going to stand up here and he's heard God's voice and he says, you know what? I need you to tell my people this, whether it feels good or not. So it's a shepherd. Number 2, it's watchman. Number 2 is a watchman. Ezekiel 33:7. Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. Therefore, hear a word from my mouth. My is capitalized, it's God's mouth. And give them warning from me. A true pastor stands on the wall, warning and protecting God's people from danger. He stands on the wall. He stands in the gap between you and God. Number 3 is a servant leader. Mark 10:45. For even a son of man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life ransom for many. I'm going to tell you, I remember a lot of those late nights. I remember telling my kids, just go get something out of the nursery. And you're like, well, oh my goodness, aren't you stealing from the church? My kids were going without meals just like their kids were. They were up there serving. I mean, when you're a pastor of a church, your kids are pastoring too. They may not be leading, but they're serving. They are the servants. They are filling in the gaps when nobody else will stand up and fill in the gap for you. They are in there vacuuming. They're whopping tables. They're cleaning up after the mess. They're getting things ready. Pastoring a small church is a family affair. It's not a pastor and Pastor Mary's thing. It's a family thing. And I'm going to tell you, there's been many, many times where my kids slept in church. I remember growing up, my mom was the director of the nursery. She wasn't a pastor, director of nursery. And I slept up under the cribs many, many nights because we had a long-winded pastor that loved to preach long times at night. Many times he would preach till after midnight on a Sunday night. And so, number 4, he's a burden bearer.